Here we are again. Another highly anticipated UFC card is only a few weeks away, but this time there's more at stake than we know. For Israel Adesanya, he has proven himself to be one of the best middleweight fighters in the world. But this time he's facing the only man to ever knock him out, and perhaps the most terrifying kickboxer in the world, Alex Pereira. Pereira is here to prove that Israel Adesanya is still no match for his kickboxing skill set, while Adesanya is out to kill the hype and get his revenge. In the co-main event, the women's strawweight champion, Carla Esparza, seeks to defend what she has worked her entire life for against the former champion, Zhang Weili, who has vowed to stop at nothing until she reclaims the title. And the last bout on the main card is the ultimate dream fight between Dustin the Diamond Poirier and Michael Iron Chandler. Who are the favorites to win? Which way do these fights go? And the biggest question of all, who comes out on top? These are our official UFC 281 predictions. Stick around to find out who we think will win, who other UFC fighters think will win, and how exactly these fighters are gonna go. Then, without wasting any further time, let's begin. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. If you're new to the whole Adesanya and Pereira drama, let's give you a little behind-the-scenes story on what exactly is going on. Back in 2016, before Israel Adesanya entered the UFC, he was a kickboxer, and a good one at that. He held an amazing record of 75-5, with Alex Pereira responsible for 2 of those 5 losses. But here's the drill. No one really cares about Adesanya losing to Pereira. It's how he lost that changed the entire scope of their rivalry. In their first match held in China, Adesanya lost via unanimous decision, with Adesanya himself believing it could have been a win in his favor. But a year later is when the real rivalry began. In 2017, still under the same kickboxing promotion, Adesanya rematched Pereira with the sole intention of getting his revenge. But again, Pereira came out blazing in the 3rd round to knock the lights out of Adesanya. Fast forward a couple of years later, and Israel Adesanya is washing through the UFC middleweight division, going past the top fighters one at a time. But Pereira, who's always had his number, is now in the UFC and is also the man Adesanya has to beat to gain the much-needed respect to his name. So the question here is, can Israel Adesanya defeat Alex Pereira? Well, the betting odds for the fight definitely suggest he can. Right now, Adesanya is the favorite to win with -175, while Pereira is an underdog with a +150. The simplest explanation as to why this is so is that Israel has harnessed his skill set far beyond what it was when he faced Pereira in kickboxing, and these are 2 totally different sports. Moreover, we've seen his execution countless times in the octagon, so maybe he has what it really takes to defeat the man in his shadow, Alex Pereira. On the other hand, Pereira is a rising force in the world of mixed martial arts. He has 5 finishes from 6 fights. He's never been knocked out, and he's earned 2 Performance of the Night bonuses in 3 UFC fights. With these, it's going to be a crazy main event. But what do the other UFC fighters have to say? Well, let's find out.
Hey, that's a tricky fight to pin down. If I was a betting man, I'd have to go with Adesanya. You'd have to. I think he's the best defensive striker in the game. Physically, it just makes perfect sense for him to fight that way, and he's a tricky guy to hit. But Pereira's huge, man. He's a huge guy, and they've fought before, so they have some sort of understanding of each other's reach. The biggest factor and variable in this fight is going to be the small gloves, and how that plays a role in the fight itself. Nobody can say until the night. So that's where I'm at on that.
I wanted to Alex up. I wanted to get in this big Brazilian's face. I wanted to hit him, and I wanted to him up on the stand-up. Now, Izzy being half woman, no offense to women, I mean, no offense, but Izzy is half woman, see his nails. Izzy is going to be a very, very non-ego man, and he's gonna prounce around, he's gonna fight at range, he's gonna outpoint Alex. He's not gonna fight Alex, he's gonna outpoint him, and he's gonna win.
And for the most detailed prediction, Henry Cejudo.
Or could Israel eventually practice wrestling? Could he take him down? Could he take him down, make him find his B-side? Because as of right now, if it comes down to striking, I am going to go with Alexander Pereira, just for the simple fact that he's beaten him twice before. This guy has more diverse with the kicks, with the jumping knees. As we saw, these are things that Israel doesn't necessarily do. Israel's the type of opponent that will chip you away, that will hurt you, and that will end up finishing you in the later rounds. For Pereira, you just don't know what you get. You know, we saw before the jumping knees, the kicks, the left hooks, the right hands. I think he's just a little more diverse. So for that reason, I'm going to Alexander Pereira.
Our pick for the main event is Israel Adesanya to win by unanimous or split decision. Moving on to the co-main event, two-time UFC strawweight women's champion Carla Esparza goes up against former champion Zhang Weili for the UFC Women's Strawweight Championship. So what's our prediction for this fight? Well, it may surprise you to know that the champ Carla Esparza is a heavy underdog with betting odds of plus 275, and Zhang Weili is the big favorite with minus 375. That's a very wide gap, people. But why is Zhang Weili such a huge favorite? Well, one is the difference in their fight game. Zhang Weili is known for her deadly fight combos and attacks. She has 11 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission, and 11 first-round finishes. For what it's worth, we saw just how deadly she could be in her fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk at UFC 248. She lands an average of 5.78 significant strikes per minute and currently holds a professional record of 25-3. On the flip side, Esparza is not so much of a striker herself, given the reason why she absorbs 2.59 significant strikes per minute. Esparza usually fights in the clinch and is good with those takedowns, but to counter her exceptional grappling, Zhang Weili went on to train with one of the best in the game, Henry Cejudo. So if Carla Esparza can avoid Weili's ruthless attacks and somehow take the fight to the ground for submission, maybe she'll win. But for Weili, all she has to do is avoid those takedowns and do her thing with her striking. A strawweight fighter who both women have faced before, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, believes Zhang Weili would win by knockout in the first round. And for some reason, not many MMA fighters are talking about this matchup because from everyone's perspective, it looks like a pretty good one for Weili. However, this is MMA, and from what we know, you can't count Esparza out. When you do, she comes from behind and proves you completely wrong. So for this one, we're going with Zhang Weili to win in a first-round finish. Now, for the people's main event, we have Dustin Poirier going up against Michael Chandler. This fight is like a real-life Clash of the Titans movie. From their records alone, you can tell it's going to be a hard one to notch. Chandler has 11 wins by knockout, 7 by submission, and 13 first-round finishes in 30 fights, while Poirier has 15 wins by knockout, 6 by submission, and 28 career UFC wins in 36 fights. It's pretty obvious that these two guys have both the experience and the skill set to win the fight. But as always, there can only be one winner. And from the betting odds right now, Poirier is the favorite to win with betting odds of minus 175 and Chandler the underdog with a plus 138. The most logical reason for this is that Poirier has way more experience fighting in the UFC, and Chandler's UFC record isn't so impressive on a closer look. Here's how UFC fighters predict the fight will go.
Maybe Poirier, yeah. He's on the good run, so maybe Poirier.
3-round fights just in general are kind of a bummer now. Like, I'm going to be kind of sad when if the day ever comes when I go back to fighting only 3 rounds. But yeah, I got Dustin in that one. I think Dustin is just like such a presence, you know, like his build, his power. I think he's just like a tough guy to deal with. The way he protects himself too, he protects himself really well. So I don't really know how Chandler would beat that other than catching Dustin, and Dustin like really doesn't get caught that often.
I think Poirier. And I both dudes are so fucking cool, man. Both guys are like super cool. Like Poirier is the man. Like we talked a little bit. Chandler, when he found out I wasn't training at Sanford anymore, you know, he DM'd me, you know, wished me well, man. You got to do what you got to do. Like, it's cool. Like, it's awesome for you. They're both just super fucking good dudes. But I think Poirier is just much more like developed. Chandler could definitely knock him out like fast, right? We know that. But we've seen that Poirier is not that guy that just goes in there and just gets starched right away. We've seen Poirier is the best when he's against those kind of guys. And we've seen with Chandler that Chandler does tend to slow down. Poirier doesn't tend to slow down at all. At all. I think Poirier wins that fight.
At the end of the day, it boils down to how Chandler takes this fight. If he comes out explosively just like he always does, Poirier might be able to find little gaps in his attacks to put him down. But if Chandler fights just like he did back in the day with Eddie Alvarez, mixing his wrestling and striking, then there's a 70% chance he wins. And that's why we're going with Dustin Poirier to win by unanimous decision. But don't take our word for it. Who do you think will win and why? Let us know in the comments section below. You might want to check out these other videos showing on your screen for some more awesome UFC content. See you next time, and bye for now.